Welcome on in, Eagles fans, to episode 59 of the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast right here on NJ.com. I'm Joe Giglio, joined as always by Elliot Shore-Parks and Mark Eckel. They cover the Eagles for NJ Advanced Media. It's been a little while since the three of us were together here doing a podcast. The season now well over. We're into almost Super Bowl week. We're doing this podcast on a Thursday and that bye week before the lead up to Super Bowl week down in Houston. So a lot to talk about. We'll get into the Super Bowl a little bit, our thoughts on the game. The Eagles, how far they're away, some news on Carson Wentz, and how much the Eagles could take away from these teams in here. Elliot, we'll start with you. It's been a little while here. The Eagles have been a little bit quiet, but there's also been some stuff going on with Howie Roseman talking this past week and Carson Wentz hiring quarterback guru. It feels like that we're kind of in the calm before the storm of whatever's going to happen this offseason with the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the talk at the end of the season when the Eagles were clearly out of it was who are they going to add, whether it be through the draft or free agency. And, certainly that's kind of started up again with the Senior Bowl going on down in Mobile, Alabama. And the Eagles love the Senior Bowl. I mean, since 2010, they've drafted the most players from the Senior Bowl outside of the Baltimore Ravens. And the guy that they hired, Joe Douglas, comes from the Baltimore Ravens. So there's a strong chance that the guys down at the Senior Bowl are guys they are going, they might draft one or two of them. But, I mean, outside of who they're going to add, I think now the real talk is, and you saw that yesterday on Wednesday when Howie Roseman talked to the media, was a lot of the talk now is who are they going to be getting rid of? What players are they going to cut? How are they going to free up salary cap space? So, it's been a quiet, stretch for the Eagles. They haven't begun contract negotiations with a lot of the guys we're going to talk about. But I think soon, pretty soon it's going to start to heat up in terms of, who they'll be releasing to free up cap space.
Mark, when you take a look at what's happened here, what maybe we're building towards happening over the last month or so, do you get the sense the Eagles are going to try to be big players this offseason, in whether it be to move up in the draft or get a big free agent? Do you think they're trying to be really aggressive again? Last year they were obviously really aggressive.
Yeah, I don't see anything like last year. I don't see a move up to number two or any of that kind of stuff. Mainly because I don't think there's I don't see that happening. I think they'll stay. Maybe a slight move here or there. Maybe perhaps a move backward. They might go down and get some extra picks. I wouldn't kill them for that because this team has a lot of needs. And if when their pick comes up, they feel there's still two or three guys that they have ranked equally, maybe you do take a couple steps back and add a second or third round pick. In terms of free agency, yeah, right now they don't have much money. They are going to have more, but I don't think they're going to have as much as everybody else does. And by getting more, that means that they're going to be getting rid of players. So that's all that's going to do is open more holes on the roster that have to be filled. So I actually did my homework, believe it or not, and I came up with a free agent list. This isn't a great free agent year, and that's before guys re-sign with their own teams, which, that probably 25% of them sign before free agency opens, if not more. So where the Eagles have needs, I don't see a lot of help available with free agency. They may add a guy, but I don't think it's going to be a blockbuster. Wow, they got this guy kind of thing. It might be, Reuben Randall type guy again.
And, not to get too off topic, but, what Mark said about, if you cut guys, you create holes. I agree with that I will actually disagree with that for a lot of the guys that we've talked about. But the one area I do agree with on that is Jason Kelce. There's been a lot of talk about, what will they do with Jason Kelce? Are they going to release him? I guess no one's really thinking they'll restructure him. So either they're going to release him or trade him or keep him. And if I'm the Eagles, I would definitely hold on to Jason Kelce. I mean, I know they have Isaac Seumalo ready, I guess, at center. At least they think he's ready. But, if you cut Jason Kelce, you save, I think it's around $3 or $4 million, but you leave about $3 million in dead money on the book. So this isn't a situation like with Connor Barwin where you save $8 million and there's only a few $100,000 in dead money. I mean, cutting Jason Kelce, I don't think last year he was a big enough of an issue. I don't think he was actually an issue at all. I mean, I think, did he have some plays where he wasn't great? Of course. I mean, and he had issues with penalties, but every player, outside of the elite have games that they're not great in. But, if you cut Jason Kelce, which is something a lot of people have said they should do to save money, I think you're creating a bigger hole because I'm not confident in Seumalo going into next season. Especially because of the fact he'll be right in front of Carson Wentz. I mean, I know that Carson Wentz will be better next year, presumably, especially when it comes to his pre-snap reads and all that. But Jason Kelce, you know what you're going to get from him. I mean, maybe he isn't an elite center anymore, but to me, his floor, next ceiling, is higher than Seumalo. Seumalo, just like with any rookie, it has nothing to do with him as a player, but as with almost any rookie, you put him in there, you have no idea what you're going to get. With Nelson Aguilar coming out of the draft, we all thought he would be a stud, and he ended up being terrible. So if you put Seumalo in there, and maybe you feel confident, and he ends up being a disaster, then the first line of defense in front of your franchise is a problem. So to talk about creating holes and cap space and all that, Jason Kelce is one example where I think they should absolutely keep him.
You can make that argument for any player that they might get rid of, except Leotis McKelvin, who's just one of the worst cornerbacks in football. But other than, I'd make a stronger case for Jason Peters.
Well, I wouldn't get rid of Jason Peters. But what I mean is,
we agree they're going to get rid of some of these guys, right?
Yeah, they have to because they don't have cap room if they don't. Like this is the only way to free up cap room.
Well, let's go through them. Let's go through them real quick. So Connor Barwin.
Who you think is terrible, but I think that would be
I don't think Connor Barwin's terrible.
You're dying to get rid of him.
Yeah, because it saves $8 million.
Yeah, the reward there is just it's almost too hard to cut him.
He's come out publicly, which is rare for a player to say, "Oh, listen, I'll do whatever I can."
Yeah, well, all right. So I'm not saying I would cut him under any circumstance. I mean, what I'm saying is, like, my argument, I guess what I was making was, if you get rid of Connor Barwin, yes, you need a defensive end.
Yeah,
but what you think you don't need a defensive end if you get rid of Connor Barwin?
No.
Why not?
How many do you need? You got Graham, Curry, Barwin. You got 3. How many you need? And don't forget Mark Smith.
If you get rid of Connor Barwin,
then you need one.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So even though you would need one, I think the need you create for a backup defensive end is not as big as the need you would create if you got rid of like a Jason Peters or Jason Kelce.
Plus the reward there is what, $7 million in cap room. Like that's a big reward for cutting him.
Okay, you still got to replace him.
Right, but what I'm saying is, right, I agree. But I guess what I'm saying is certain guys on the roster, even though it creates a hole,
I don't think you have to replace. Again, you say you don't think Seumalo's ready, and you may be 100% right. I'm not going to argue the virtues of Isaac Seumalo, but if the Eagles think Seumalo is ready, if they believe he's ready, then put him out there, because if you took him in the 3rd round, I mean, he was your 2nd pick, but 3rd round. If you think he's ready, play him and get rid of Kelce and save the $3.5 million or whatever it is. If that, I mean, that's what they have to think. It's not up to us to decide if players are ready. That's why that's why these guys make a lot of money.
Elliot, do you get the sense that they think he's? I mean, everything. I think back to Doug during the season when Seumalo got a lot of playing time and he had to play all over the place in December, and then Howie. So we're doing this on a Thursday. Howie was on with Angelo Cataldi on WIP on Monday. He did an in-studio thing with Joe Douglas, and one of the things they talked about, he was in there for like 25 minutes, but was the promising offensive lineman. Like he was talking about the draft and last year and the needs, and they kind of filled the needs with good players from the draft. And he mentioned both Seumalo and Vaitai. Like those are 3rd and 5th round picks that he wanted to talk about. I get the sense, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on offensive line, but I get the sense they think Seumalo can play, and they really think he could play.
They definitely do. I mean, so, you mentioned it, but Doug Peterson at the end of the season said he'd feel confident putting him in there right now as the starting center. So
it all adds up if you check the dots, right? I mean,
and see, that's the tough part because you're right. Like if they think Seumalo can be just as good as Jason Kelce, if not maybe better, then yeah, it does make sense to get rid of Jason Kelce. But the problem is, I'm not Howie Roseman, I'm not Joe Douglas, and I don't think he will be as good as Jason Kelce. So
I agree. I agree with what you say, but I'm not sure they do.
No, they definitely. I mean, publicly, I guess what they think privately and what they say publicly is probably different. But I definitely get the sense that they think Seumalo can play for sure. So, and I mean, I don't think it's as big of a deal as Mark does when it comes to sitting a 3rd round pick for another year. I mean, I think you can maybe put him in a guard, depending what you do with Alan Barber or whatever. So I don't know, but I think if they go into next season with Seumalo as their center, I think it's fair to look at that as a big question mark because you have no idea what he's going to be. And I don't think you get to, at this point of Carson Wentz's development, I don't think that's a risk worth taking, in my opinion.
Let me ask you this: can you get anything for Jason Kelce? And does that change your opinion?
Well, I mean, I know this sounds silly, but the fact he's a Pro Bowl player now, I mean, that certainly doesn't hurt his market value. I'm not saying it's a big deal, but I mean, he is.
Got in because a bunch of guys.
Whatever. I mean, well, he was second alternate, wasn't he?
I don't.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, whatever. But no, I mean, I'm not saying that a team.
So the Detroit Lions call you and say, "Hey, we heard you're looking to move Kelce. We'll give you a 5th-round pick."
If they're going to cut, if the option is cutting him or that, I'm taking.
No, I'm asking Elliot, who doesn't want to cut him, but would you take a 5th-round pick for him?
No, I would not.
Okay.
The only thing I would start to consider it for a 3rd.
Oh, you're not. Well, then.
I know you're not going to get a 3rd. I'm just saying that's when I would.
For him.
All right. Well, right. But I'm just saying, if a team offered me a 5th, I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's worth the risk of potentially messing up Carson Wentz. I just don't think. I don't think it's worth like we've said throughout the podcast all season, through training camp, through since they drafted him. This is all about making sure Carson Wentz ends up being good. And part of that is Jason Kelce. I mean, Jason Kelce helped him with pre-snap reads. Jason Kelce, everyone thinks he was like the worst center in the league last year, but the Eagles had one of the best pass-protecting offensive lines in the league. And Jason Kelce...
According to?
What?
According to who?
Well, say
the words.
No, it's not Pro Football Focus.
Oh, really?
It's like Football Outsiders.
Oh, okay.
But okay, it was a website that watches all the offensive lines play. So I'll take their word for it.
I watched Eagles offensive line play. I didn't think they were the best pass.
I thought Carson Wentz, outside of the Redskins game, got decent to above average pass protection all year.
I think he helped himself a little bit with his mobility, but
he did. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think he was running for his life all season.
Okay.
All right. Well, regardless, my point is
they clearly have depth there. I think they have more depth than I thought they did before the year. Like the backup, the kids they drafted, like Howie keeps talking about, they're real players. I don't know if they're good, really good, but like you could put them in and like they got through games. Like so, I think their offensive line is deeper than I thought it was before the year.
Yeah, I mean, well, they have depth in the way that they think Vaitai and Seumalo can play. I mean,
they also like those other kids too a little bit. Or they wouldn't have kept Dylan Gordon and Josh Andrews.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing to me is Dylan Gordon, who, for those on the podcast that aren't familiar with him because he didn't play at all this year. Well, also now they have Taylor Hart on offensive line. Let's not forget about that.
Problems are there and forget on them. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't. I forgot they can't cut Jason Peters now.
But Dylan Gordon was a tight end in college. I think he went to LSU. He was a tight end for some of the offseason work last offseason, but they moved him to tackle. And I thought this was interesting. He told me this the last day of Unlocker Cleanout. They've had him practice at left tackle all season, which is interesting for a couple reasons. One, because Jason Peters is our current left tackle. Two, when Lane Johnson, I would assume, moves from right tackle, he's going to go to left tackle. So why would you have Dylan Gordon practice at left tackle all year? I just thought that was an interesting decision on their part. So I do think they like Dylan Gordon quite a bit. And, I'm not saying he's going to be the next Jason Peters, but he was a tight end, which Jason Peters was in college. And having seen Dylan Gordon throughout the season, he is built a lot like Jason Peters. He actually looks like him too, for what it's worth. But I mean, he does look like a Jason Peters clone. Turning into Jason Peters, who's one of the best tackles, and Mark can probably comment to this more, maybe one of the best tackles in the history of the league. I mean, he's been one of the more athletic tackles. So that's obviously a lot to ask. But yeah, I mean, when you talk about these guys, other than Vaitai and Seumalo, I think Dylan Gordon is one that they do like a lot.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, the offensive line and what they do with these kids, it's going to be a fascinating way they go about their offseason because they're going to need to free up some money. You mentioned Carson Wentz, too, and the whole thing, and we know this, is doing everything you can for Carson Wentz. It's why they're going to go after some sort of weapons, whether it be the draft or free agency. It's why all these offensive line discussions are so tricky because you're protecting a franchise quarterback. And before we get into the Super Bowl stuff and maybe what the Eagles can learn
Can I just say one more thing about Carson Wentz and Kelce?
Sure.
Because this is, I think, how the Eagles are going to spin it, if and when they get – and they may not. That might all be bad rumors. But if they were to get rid of Kelce and put Seumalo at center, and I hear Elliott's side that might hurt Carson, they're going to sell it as, in the long run, this is a good thing for Carson because, let's be honest, the Eagles can't say this out loud, but do you think the Eagles are going to win a Super Bowl next year?
No,
I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl.
if and when they get to that level, Kelce is going to be long gone, right? So
yeah, I looked. His
why
cap
not?
number really gets big the next. Like they could, like Elliot was saying before, you could bring him back for what he's at next year. But I was looking at it. At some point here, he's not going to be worth what they have to
Right.
pay him. So this
He's
day is coming
break down.
soon.
He's breaking down. I know Elliott thinks he had a good year last year, but not compared to what he was. I mean, I saw Kelce at his best. He's nowhere near that anymore. He's just worn down. So
I don't disagree with you on that. Not to interrupt, but he was one of the best centers in the league like 3 years ago. So yeah, no, he's not one of the best centers in the league. But I do think he's an above average to like.
But he's going the wrong way. Is my point, right? We acknowledge he's not. He's declining. So my point is, if and when the Eagles get to where they're very good, he's not going to be a part of it because he'll if he continues on the decline. Samalo will be their guy. So I'm just giving the Eagles what they're going to tell the public if and when they did get rid of Kelce is we want to start this Samalo Wentz relationship now and get it growing. So when that's what I think what the Eagles should be thinking is who's going to be the nucleus of our team when Carson's ready to take us to a Super Bowl.
And I agree with you. I agree with you on that on every single position besides offensive line because I still think it's really important to protect Carson Wentz. So, like, if you're saying, like, all right, Ryan Mathews, we use this example a lot, even though there's no reason. He's definitely not going to be on the team next year.
Well, no,
Ryan Mathews makes no sense to have on the roster because even though he's a better running back than, like, right now he's a better running back probably than Wendell Smallwood or some of these younger guys, right? Like, he doesn't make sense to have because in 2 years when they're ready to compete, he's not going to be there. So if you look at, like, receiver and tight end and running back, and really on defense, even though it doesn't impact Wentz, it still is as part of the larger rebuild. But the one position where I think you still need to make sure you can't completely look towards the future is offensive line because if you take all these gambles, I mean, if you put Sayamalu out there and they decide to get rid of Peters and put Lane.
No, you can't. No, I agree 100% with you there. You can't tear the whole thing down, but you can go. But you can't go piece. I mean, I don't know. Let's see what they do. I was just throwing out you know me. I'm always sticking up for the Eagles, so I'm just giving you.
Your logic makes sense. I'm just saying, I think it's a risk. I don't think a lot of people see getting rid of Jason Kelce as a risk, and I think that's my point I'm making is it's not a sure thing if they get rid of him.
Absolutely, it's not. But I think any move they make in getting rid of a veteran, like I said, other than McKelvin, has the risk there for you,
Yeah, I agree.
No doubt. I mean, this is a guy that's been a good player for them. Even if he's not what he was, he's been a good center for a while, and it would change their offensive line if they had a different center there. The other thing that we started talking about this week a lot was Carson Wentz, and we all know his improvement here is going to be the focus and the vital. Everything about the Eagles the next 10 years is how good can Carson Wentz get, and it's interesting because last year during the season, specifically after the Bengal game, when that was just probably rock bottom of the season, Carson Wentz kind of dismissed the idea that he had mechanical issues. Well, we found out this week that he's going to work out with an independent quarterback guru. And Mark, I know you specifically wanted to talk about this. It's interesting because, I mean, this shouldn't hurt. This should only help. But you think back to the season, he didn't really want to talk about this. And now, whether it's an admission or it's just him trying to improve himself, clearly he's going to try to go fix the mechanical issues he does have.
Yeah, and my take on it, hey, good for Carson. I admire any player that sees his flaws and wants to, get rid of them and become better. Kudos to Carson for doing it. My take is, and I know it's the off season and you're not allowed to work with hands-on with your coaches, but they could give them things to do. I mean, your head coach is a former NFL quarterback. Your offensive coordinator is a former NFL quarterback. And you have a quarterback coach who you obviously think the world of because you wouldn't let the Jets even talk to him about a job. Maybe Carson looks at those three and says, they're not helping me at all. I gotta go get my own guy. I mean, to me, it's a little bit of an indictment of Doug Peterson, Frank Reich, and John DeFilippo that he's going out and getting his own guy. I mean, if Nelson Aguilar wants to go get someone to help him catch passes better, well, the guy they had wasn't very good. They just fired him. He don't know the new guy. Okay, I would say kudos to Nelson and go ahead. But I thought the strength of this Eagle coaching staff was all these former quarterbacks they have on it.
Well, here would be my counter to that. The first would be we don't know, and I've tried to get in touch with the quarterback coach and haven't been the quarterback guru guy and haven't been able to. But we don't know if he's in contact with the Eagles. And the other thing is, aren't the Eagles not allowed to work with Carson Wentz right now?
Yeah, I said that. They're not hands on, but they could give him, they could say, Carson, here, this is John DeFilippo, his quarterback coach, should be able to give him, listen, these are the things you need to work on until we see you again in whenever it is, March or April, whenever March, I guess.
Yeah.
It's only a little bit of time that they're not allowed to work. People make it sound like they, oh no, you can't do anything with it. It's a little bit of time, which Carson needs a little bit of a break, I think, anyway. I mean,
yeah, and I'm sure he's going to take a little bit of a break.
In a way, get his head clear for a little bit, but they could give him things to do and things to work on. I just find it kind of funny that a team that's, all we heard about was why Wentz is going to be so great is because he has Doug Peterson and Frank Reich and John DeFilippo, all these quarterback gurus at his disposal, and he says, I got to go hire my own guy.
Yeah, I just think, though, that, I mean, he could be he's probably working on all the things Eagles told him to, and I just think it's easier to work on those things when you have some form of a coach with you as opposed to, by yourself in a field, out in North Dakota somewhere. I don't
know. I don't think Aaron Rodgers did that. I don't think Tom Brady did that.
They work with quarterback coaches.
Yeah, their own.
I mean, I'd have to look it up, but I don't think him working with an independent quarterback coach is a sign of him not trusting the coaching staff.
All right.
Here's the bottom line. Hopefully it works, right? That's all Eagles fans are going to care about. It's probably all Doug Peterson's going to care about. If he comes to camp or mini camp or whenever he can come back in and he's got his footwork and everything and his base is better, I think everyone's going to be happy about it. It is interesting, though. We'll see if this guy does help and does fix some of those mechanical issues. All right, guys, let's move on to the Super Bowl teams, and we'll get into the game in a second. But
can we talk about one more Eagles thing before we move on to this?
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to throw this out here, and this is a classic me question. I wrote about it yesterday on the website. I want to get your guys' opinion on this.
Okay.
So Antonio Brown, right, with the Steelers. There's now the Pro Football Talk wrote that the Steelers are probably going to put him on the trade block. Another website yesterday, a guy out of Pittsburgh, said he wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being traded. So I guess what I'd ask you two is, and I'll give my take on it too, if you're the Eagles, let's just say Antonio Brown is available, what do you give up for him? I'll listen to you guys first, then I'll give my take. But I'd be interested to see what you guys think about that, because clearly he would fill a need at receiver.
I mean, he would more than fill a need. I guess I'll go first. The one thing, I mean, he's rubbing people the wrong way over there. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you could hear it in Tomlin's voice, you could hear it in Roethlisberger's voice. But he's a great player, and outside of a few receivers, most of these guys, act like this to an extent, all the time or from time to time. So the way he is wouldn't turn me off because his production is so good. I would give up a ton to get him. I mean, he is re-signed, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, it's not like he's going to walk away in a year. I'll bring up the example, and we could do this too when it comes to the Falcons and the example the Eagles can use, of these Super Bowl teams and how they get to a good level. I mean, it's different because that was the draft, but the Falcons weren't afraid to go get Julio Jones, right? To give up a ton to go get a playmaker for their quarterback, and that worked out for them. So, yeah, I mean, a first-round pick, I don't know how much more would it take? A first and a third? I don't know. I don't know how much. I don't even know what they'd ask for, but I'd give up, whatever market value would be. Mark, what do you think?
I'm going to take the other side again a little bit. I mean, it's going to cost a lot. I mean, start with they're not going to give them anything less than a first that they're going to hang up the phone. I think depending on where you pick in the first will determine what else it costs. Maybe a first and a third, maybe a first and if there's a player that they like on whatever team's roster that they're talking to, it might be a first and a player. He's what, 29?
He's 28. He'll be 20. He'll play next year at 29. He's July birthday, so he'll play next year at 29.
I'm not sure I want to give up a whole lot for again. I'm basing it off now. This was the missing piece. If you tell me that's all, hey, we get Antonio Brown. The Eagles are definitely in the playoffs and have a shot for the Super Bowl next year. By all means, trade whatever it takes. But again, I'm looking at this Eagle team as a couple years down the road. Now he's going to be 31, 32 by then. I don't know if I want to give up a whole lot for a guy that's now. If he was a free agent, no, then we're not even having this conversation. Go sure, pay him whatever you have to pay him, but to give up some good assets to get a guy who's already going to be 29 starting next year, and he's a wide receiver. I've seen wide receivers, they lose it in a hurry. Not that again, he has shown no signs of losing it, but when you do, you do. And so he could turn 31 and all of a sudden not be good anymore. It happens. It happens. Irving Fryers is the one that pops in my head all the time. He was great the one year. Next year, it just hit him, and he just wasn't a good player anymore. So I'd be leery about giving up a lot for a guy at his age.
So I think the thing that got me at first, when you say like, all right, trade for Antonio Brown, you're like, oh yeah, I'll give up whatever. I think outside of Julio Jones and Odell, probably the third best receiver in the league, and you can make arguments for all three. But he's played over 100 games in his career. Right. Like, so.
A lot of miles.
Yeah. I mean, would you do just the Eagles' first-round pick straight up?
Yeah, I think you have to.
I think I would too. Just because even if let's say you get 4 more really good years out of him, which I think is fair. 3, probably 3 definitely. You know what I mean? I think, I'm not saying the Eagles can win the Super Bowl next year, but as you've said, Mark, I mean, look at the Falcons this year. Yeah, right? Last year the Falcons were bad, right? You can turn it around quickly, and I think the NFC East, although it's good, I don't think you can look next season and say there's one, I mean, the Cowboys certainly are going to have their issues when it comes to the cap and keeping certain players. The Redskins, I think they probably bring back Kirk Cousins, but, there's a lot of question marks there. And the Giants as well, Eli's not playing well. So I think you could say that, no, the Eagles are not, almost no matter what they do, the Eagles are not going to enter next season as a Super Bowl favorite. This isn't like adding Terrell Owens where you said, all right, all they need is a receiver.
That was all they needed that year, right?
Right, that was all they needed. But let's say you add Antonio Brown with your first-round pick, and then, by some miracle, Howie Roseman's able to draft players with, in the 2nd through 7th, they're able to contribute. You sign a receiver. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't think you need
to sign a receiver if you get Antonio Brown. Sign something else. Sign a running back.
Right. Well, or maybe you still probably would need one more. But my point is, I think I'd probably give up the first round pick. But if you talked about giving up like a first and a third, or 2 firsts or a first and a really good player, then I think I wouldn't do it. Just because for the reasons Mark said, and Joe to a certain degree, I don't know. I don't know if he does enough where you're giving up 3 or 4 players that could be contributing down the road.
See,
the other part about before you go on, Mark, the other part about this is, and again, none of us can answer the question of his desire. I don't know if he's going to want to continue to, some guys like Larry Fitzgerald and other guys, they keep playing well into their mid-30s because of their work ethic. I don't know what he's going to be, but I mean, we're talking about a guy that's coming off of, I think, the most prolific 4-year stretch ever in terms of catching passes. 110, 129, 136, 106. Like, this guy changes the game. I mean, he's got 400 and I'm doing the math in my head right now. He's got close to 500 catches the last 4 years. That's pretty insane.
Yeah, no, you can't question his productivity. I mean, no. I mean, you can question, like Elliott said, that he's been in the league. He's not a big guy either. Like Fitzgerald's a big, strong guy. That's part of his longevity. What is Brown, like 5'11", 180?
5'10", 180, yeah.
Yeah. I'd rather, to be honest, go after Brandon Cooks in New Orleans. It wouldn't cost you as much to get, and he's 23. You might have years.
I would rather. So
he might be around. I mean, him and Carson are about the same. They would grow together, I think. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't think it would cost. It would. Again, if New Orleans asked for the world, you say thanks or no thanks. But I think if you can get him for a second and a Michael Kendricks or a second and Connor Barwin or whatever New Orleans likes off your roster, I would go down that road before I'd spend a whole lot on Antonio Brown.
Yeah, and it might not even happen. But I mean, when you look at the Steelers, and I know
there's smoke there. There's obviously
and also there's a thing where now Ben Roethlisberger saying he might not come back. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if he became available, and if he becomes available, the Eagles are going to be a team that's linked to him because of how badly they need receivers.
No, there's no doubt about that. I mean, if a star receiver becomes available, it'd be shocking if you didn't at least hear the Eagles, placed a phone call and thought about it. It is interesting. I mean, guys like that, they're on the market, it changes the game. So,
but we're not the only people. We're not the only people having this conversation. I mean, there's a podcast going on with the Rams right now where they're saying, "Hey, if Antonio Brown becomes available, there's one."
But the difference is
the only team.
The difference is though, and
the difference is no one listens to Rams podcasts.
Yeah. Well, that's the number
They're
one.
still doing it though, just because the tree falls in the forest,
But the difference is the Eagles, and they are a team that would do something like this, right? I mean, the Eagles traditionally they like to make splashes. I think I wouldn't surprise me if Antonio Brown becomes available. That they're very much involved.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I mean, and they're aggressive, and they've said over and over again, and Howie said it this past Monday morning. I think he used it was a phrase. I'm paraphrasing him here. It was something like they don't want to kick themselves years from now and say they didn't give Carson Wentz everything. A disservice, right, Mark? What he give everything he needed to become the quarterback that he maybe can be. It's interesting, and it'd be fascinating if they get involved.
This may mean nothing at all, but I'll ask you guys. Can Howie trade a first? We all agree it would take a first-round pick minimum, right?
Yeah.
Can he trade a first-round pick with the draft being?
Although, wait, can I say one thing? Will it definitely take a first-round pick? And I know this was an extenuating circumstance, but remember when the Eagles got rid of Deshaun, they ended up having to cut him. I'm not 100% sure it's going to take definitely a first-round pick. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
People in Pittsburgh would lose their minds if they don't get a first-round pick for him.
Exactly.
Right?
Take a first-round.
I think the fans would go crazy. He just had the most productive 4-year stretch in NFL history. How did they not get a first-round pick?
You can't trade a guy.
Yeah, Deshaun was coming off a Pro Bowl season.
Well, you didn't have 100 catches.
No, but I think he had a bunch. I mean, regardless, my point is,
don't compare Deshaun Jackson to Antonio Brown. Okay, just don't do it.
All right. I'm just saying.
Also, the Eagles besides the story, what you worked on and what happened there in the off-the-field stuff, the Eagles destroyed his own value. Chip Kelly didn't help with that. I mean, they could have traded him earlier, I think, and then it got worse.
Are you want to bring up Deshaun? The Eagles cut Deshaun, and one team wanted him. If the Steelers cut Antonio Brown, you think there'd be a little interest?
Yeah, I think there'd be a ton more interest.
Percy Harvin got traded for a first-round pick. Minnesota traded him to Seattle for a first-round pick. I think Antonio Brown's better than Percy Harvin ever was.
Yeah, well, he is.
Right. It's going to take a first round. I don't think a first-round pick is going to be enough, depending on where your pick is. I really don't. I don't
we've been having this conversation. This guy's unreal, and a Facebook video and maybe some stuff that we don't know about behind the scenes is just it's opened this can of worms. It's not crazy to talk about. It's just crazy that it's happening. That we're actually having this conversation.
Right. So yesterday when I wrote the story, everyone's like, "Never going to happen," blah blah. But I do think there's a strong chance it does.
Yeah, I mean, diva receivers. I mean, they live out their shelf life in a place.
Yeah,
look
at T.O. T.O.'s the example. I mean, but the difference is, you said, he's signed for how many more years? A couple more years.
We can look that up. I remember him signing a big deal a few years ago. I'm not sure how long it lasts, but obviously he's.
But it's not like this year. He has more than 1 year left, obviously, right?
So we're going to look that up as we go along, and we'll circle back.
Time left. He has time left on his deal. I'm almost certain of that.
You're talking Antonio Brown?
Yes.
Yeah. I think he's got 3 or 4 more years.
Yes, I'm saying so. There's no problem with that.
Oh, wait, unrestricted free agent 2018. That's why another reason they'll trade him is because if they don't like him, and that's another reason why he might not cost a first-round pick, is because if you're the Eagles...
So we were wrong about the contract before you go on. He's a free agent after next season or after the one after?
He's a free agent in 2018. So
he has 1 year left.
He's got 1 year left on his deal.
Well, that does change the equation.
Now I don't want him. Now I really don't want him.
Well, no, but this is my point. So if you're
forget it.
Yeah, but my point is, if you're any team or if you're the Eagles, not only are you going to have to give up a big asset to get him, you're also going to have to give him a new deal. And that's why I think ultimately it won't end up costing as much as people think.
I agree. Now I thought he was signed through 2-3 more years. That's what I was.
All right. So now let's go down this road for a little bit. If you're the Eagles and you're going to have to give him let's say the Steelers make him available, would you give up a 3rd round pick?
Oh God, yeah, 3rd round pick.
And you got to give him. And you got to give him a new deal though.
Yeah, I'll do that. 3rd round pick.
I'm still giving up the 1st round pick and re-signing him.
You would still do the first and re-sign him.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to re-sign him. That would
obviously right.
You then have to be comfortable to make him part of your future for the next 5 years. Otherwise,
do that with a 29-year-old guy.
So, all right. Before we wrap this up, let's all go around and say What would you give up? What would be all right? The Steelers call you right now. We know everything about the situation. And you get one offer. What's your offer?
Let me go first.
Knowing that once you get him, you're going to have to give him probably a deal that makes him the highest paid receiver in the league.
I would offer. I'm not worried. I'll worry about sliding the contract when that comes.
Well, that's a big part of it.
Sure, it is. But I'm saying I'm not going to think about that as I'm talking to. I mean, I'll give a third, and if I have to be pressed, I'll give you a third. And what do they want back? I'll give them a third in Dorial Green Beckham, or a third in whatever, a player that I don't really care about.
I'd give up the 14th or 15th pick in the draft.
Wow.
I think I'd give up a second. It's just a good pick. I mean, it's top of the second round, and I'd re-sign him. But I would
re-sign him.
The thing about the first is, like, what if Mike Williams isn't going to be there, but like, what if you can get like a cornerback that could contribute?
A real good cornerback's going to be there at 14.
Yeah,
real good one.
That being said, they're all gambles. I think I'd probably give up my first. Because,
like, what are the odds these guys become anything close to Antonio Brown?
Yes, that's the part. Yeah.
Antonio Brown's history, or Antonio Brown at 30, 31, 32? We don't know what Antonio Brown's going to be like at 30, 31, 32.
We don't. I mean, that you're gambling on his right. Health, his work ethic. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know the guy seems like, they're tired of him in Pittsburgh, but obviously his production hasn't waned. It's not like he's, pouting on the field. He's just whatever else is going on.
Antonio Brown next year will be good, no matter where he is next year.
Yeah, he's going to play well.
He'll be good next year. I'm worried about.
He's going to be good for more than one more year. I mean, let's be honest.
But I don't think he'll be good. If you give him a 4-year, 5-year deal, I think at the end of that deal, you're going to be saying, "Oh my God, we're stuck with this guy. He's not any good anymore."
Well, the other thing to throw in this too is when you watch him, and I think we all have different views when we watch different players. Do you think, Mark? I'll ask you because you've seen a lot. When you watch him play, do you think we're watching a guy in an amazing stretch, or do you think we're watching a Hall of Famer? Because based on his last 4 years, he's on the path to the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. But like I said, and like Elliot said, he's played up. There's a lot of. I mean, he's had a Hall of Fame stretch. Those 4 years were incredible, and maybe next year probably will be as well. So he'll have a 5-year stretch. But then he's going to be 31. As you get older, I'm just telling you, wide receivers and small wide receivers. I've seen too many of them just fall off the cliff, and I'd be.
What would
scared.
be the best case scenario? Marvin Harrison.
There's one.
I'm just trying to project his game, going forward. Like if
I don't know. I mean, I don't know Antonio. Like we said, we don't know how hard he works, how much he cares. I don't know enough about him. That would be if I was Howie Roseman, Joe Douglas, whoever, or any other team's general manager. That's the homework that you have to do, and you have to find out about this guy. Not just, I mean, we can all look at him and say, yeah, he catches 100 passes for 1,500 yards, whatever it is. That's anybody knows that. You have to find out more about him and what and why Pittsburgh's willing to get rid of it. I can't imagine it was just that Facebook video. There's got to be more to it than that, right?
Well, it's also like there was a report that they feel he cares more about numbers than winning.
Oh, what did I see? That he didn't celebrate when D'Angelo Williams scored on Sunday because he wanted it to be him. I saw that in one of those stories.
I think that bothered me a little bit, but not enough to not
trade the guy.
And for what it's worth,
that was TO to a T. Oh,
right, yeah. All right. Well, I thought it was an interesting question to kind of wrap it up on. Just see what you thought.
It obviously was. All right, let's wrap with this. A couple Super Bowl thoughts.
Oh, yeah, we didn't get to that.
We didn't get to it. Let's do that. We'll end with that because we got on a lot of different things. And there's always a lot to talk about with the Eagles. And we'll have this entire offseason to get deeper into all these subjects. Super Bowl thoughts. It's the Falcons. It is the Patriots. No surprise with the Patriots. I think some people were surprised with Falcons, even though they probably shouldn't have been, considering how good their offense was all year. Number one offense, number one defense. We've seen this story in different years play out. Elliot, first thought with about a week and a half to go until the game.
My first thought is I think the Patriots might smoke them and blow them out, but I've also doubted the Falcons all season. If you would ask me at the beginning of the playoffs, the one team I thought had the least shot to win the Super Bowl in the NFC, I'd say the Falcons. I mean, I didn't think they were a legitimate contender. So I've literally been wrong about them all season. So on one hand, yes, I think the Patriots will beat them. But on the other hand, I'm probably going to end up being wrong about that. And it wouldn't surprise me if they won. I mean, Matt Ryan's playing at a great level. Obviously, Tom Brady is too. Julio Jones is basically unstoppable. So I don't know, but I wouldn't doubt the Falcons anymore, clearly. So if I gun to my head, I think I might pick the Falcons.
Mark?
No, Elliot, stick with your first reaction.
Yes, yeah, I know.
New England. This was New England's year from day one. This is Brady's on a mission, and that the last thing the league needed was the league to get Tom Brady upset. He's good enough when he's just playing when he's not upset. Now, this was their goal. They want, and I'm never going to be more excited about a post-game celebration.
I know.
I am this because I want to see the league and the commissioner have to give the Patriots the Lombardi Trophy and give Tom Brady the MVP trophy. That's going to be fun. That's going to be more fun than the game, I think.
My whole thing is 2 weeks on this, with Belichick getting 2 weeks. I mean, that Falcon offense, it's legit. I mean, it's...
Oh, no. I'm not taking anything away from Falcons.
Yeah. They are. I think they're the 8th highest scoring offense ever. They've put up 1 million points in the 2 playoff games. I think they'll score enough so it's not a complete blowout, but I like the Pats too. And I just think about Belichick getting 2 weeks to prepare. He'll figure out something. They'll have enough.
Julio Jones out of the game.
Yep.
Somehow, some way.
Just like when he played, all those Peyton Manning Colts teams, or when he played the greatest show on turf, he'll figure out a way.
Antonio Brown out of the game last week.
He did. I mean, that's what he does.
He has a shutdown corner in Eric Rowe.
Yeah, we didn't get into the Eric Rowe thing.
Death Row, as I call him.
You know what? We may have to do another whole podcast on that whole thing.
Next week, let's do another one next week. We'll just do the Eric Rowe podcast.
The Eric Rowe podcast, and just tap into that whole thing, which is a mess and was probably a mess when they did it. All right, guys, this was a fun one. We'll be back soon. Elliot, you're heading down to the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, so I'll be there to watch the celebration if the Patriots win.
Houston, we have a problem. Elliot's heading there.
Something tells me, Elliot, you're not going to get as good of a post-game video from the losing quarterback this year as you did last year.
No, that video I got of Cam Newton last year will probably top it. But hey, I mean, if Tom Brady goes off, who knows? I'll be there with my video. Tell you that much.
You'll be there. All right, so
Eric Rowe
horizontally. What?
Do Eric Rowe. You got to do big Eric Rowe story.
Oh, I will. Don't worry.
Last Howie Roseman, you get it on video. That'd be good. All right, guys, this was a fun one. Elliot, have fun at the Super Bowl. Mark, we will catch up soon. Okay. And as always, thanks for doing this, Elliot.
Yep, talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Joe. Take care.
And thanks to all of you for listening to episode 59 of the No Huddle Show. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're there. Leave us a rating. It helps the show grow. We'll be back soon on NJ.com.